The champagne hit the floor and shattered as the flight attendant pointed at the woman in seat 1A, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "First class is for people who belong here," she spat. "Not you." Around them, passengers froze. Security was being summoned. A public humiliation was unfolding at 30,000 feet. What no one knew, not the sneering purser, not the smug businessmen watching with satisfaction, was that the quiet woman in the hoodie had already won. Her phone vibrated softly in her hand. The airline had been bought. The crew had already failed the test. And in less than a minute, power was about to shift in a way none of them could stop. This is the story of how arrogance met its match at 30,000 FT. The automatic doors of JFK's Terminal 4 slid open, admitting a gust of humid July air and a woman who looked like she had just rolled out of bed, if that bed was draped in Egyptian cotton sheets and located in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Vivian Lauren adjusted her oversized sunglasses. She wore a charcoal grey hoodie that looked worn but was actually cashmere woven by a boutique Italian at Atelier that didn't have a website. Her leggings were Lululemon. Her sneakers were limited edition Yeezys, and her hair was pulled back into a messy bun that defied gravity. To the untrained eye, she looked like a tired student, or perhaps an off-duty backup dancer. To the trained eye, the platinum card tucked into her phone case and the subtle glint of a Patek Philippe watch on her wrist whispered a different story. But nobody at the Aura Airways check-in counter had a trained eye today. Vivian approached the first-class wash priority lane. It was empty, a red carpet promising swift passage. To her left, the economy line snaked back toward the entrance, a river of tired families and stressed business travelers. "Excuse me, miss," a voice barked. Vivian paused, looking around. A man in a blue Aura Airways vest holding a clipboard stepped into her path. His name tag read, Kyle. He wasn't looking at her face. He was looking at her hoodie. "The economy line starts back there," Kyle said, pointing a thumb over his shoulder without making eye contact. "This is for first-class passengers, only gold medallion members and above." "I know," Vivian said, her voice calm, a smooth contralto that usually commanded boardrooms. "I'm on the flight to London, seat 1A. Kyle let out a short, incredulous laugh. He looked her up and down, making a show of inspecting her attire. "Seat 1A, look, honey. Upgrades don't work like that. You can't just stand in the fancy line and hope for a miracle. Please move. You're blocking the way for actual priority guests." Behind Vivian, a man in a bespoke navy suit cleared his throat. He was wheeling a Toomey suitcase and checking his Rolex. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone clipped. Kyle's demeanor instantly shifted from bulldog to golden retriever. "So sorry, Mr. Wentworth, just clearing some debris. Please come right through." He ushered the man in the suit past Vivian, essentially shouldering her aside. Vivian felt the familiar prickle of heat on her neck. It wasn't the first time she'd been dismissed, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. But today was different. Today she wasn't just Vivian Laurel, tech mogul and philanthropist. Today, she was the newly appointed CEO of the holding company that had acquired Aura Airways 48 hours ago. The deal was finalized in a closed-door meeting in Geneva. The press release wouldn't go out until tomorrow morning. Technically, she owned Kyle's vest, his clipboard, and the carpet he was standing on. "I have a boarding pass," Vivian said, stepping back into the lane, blocking Mr. Wentworth's path. She pulled out her phone and held up the QR code. "Scan it." Kyle sighed, the sound loud and theatrical. He snatched the scanner from his belt, aiming it at her phone screen with the aggression of a weapon. "If this beeps, red security is escorting you out." Beep! A soft, affirmative green light flashed. Kyle stared at the screen. Passenger Lauren V, seat 1A. Status invitation only. He blinked. The machine didn't lie, but his prejudice was louder than the technology. He handed the scanner back, his face souring. Machine glitching, or someone in the system. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer to take her bag. He just jerked his head toward the counter. "Go, but don't expect them to be as nice as I am inside." Vivian walked past him, her face impassive. "I don't expect niceness, Kyle," she murmured as she passed. I expect competence, and I see we're already at a deficit. She moved toward the security checkpoint, her mind already cataloguing the interaction. Strike one. The plan was simple, a secret shopper experience. The board was concerned about declining service ratings and allegations of discrimination on Aura's transatlantic routes. They wanted hard data. Vivian, with her youthful face and casual style, was the perfect mole. She breezed through security TSA pre-check, didn't care about hoodies, and made her way to the Aura First Class Lounge. The receptionist at the lounge, a younger woman named Sarah with bright eyes, scanned her boarding pass and smiled genuinely. "Welcome, Miss Lauren. We have a private cabana open if you'd like to shower before the flight, or the dining area is serving a lobster bisque." Finally, Vivian thought. Someone doing their job. Just a corner seat and some sparkling water. Thank you. She sat in the far corner of the lounge observing. The lounge was a sanctuary of beige leather and soft jazz. Businessmen spoke in hushed tones about mergers. Wealthy matrons adjusted their jewelry. Vivian opened her laptop, not a standard MacBook, but a heavily modified secure terminal she used for corporate espionage prevention. She began typing a report. Subject ground staff assessment, JFK Terminal 4 employee, Kyle check-in incident profiling based on attire, race refusal of service, aggressive demeanor, recommendation termination. She hit save, one down. But the real test was the flight itself. Aura Airways prided itself on its skies of gold service. The cabin crew on the London route was supposed to be the elite, the creme de la creme. An announcement chimed over the speakers. Aura Airways flight 9002 to London Heathrow is now boarding. We invite our first-class passengers to board at gate B12. Vivian closed her laptop. She took a deep breath. She had a feeling the turbulence was going to start long before takeoff. The jet bridge was cool and smelled of aviation fuel and recycled air. Vivian walked down the incline, her heart rate steady, but her senses on high alert. Ahead of her walked Mr. Wentworth, the man from the check-in line. He was on his phone loudly complaining about riffraff in the priority lane. At the aircraft door, two flight attendants stood like sentinels. One was a younger woman, blonde and nervous-looking, named Chloe. The other was the purser, the head flight attendant. Her name tag read Meredith. Meredith was a study in severe grooming. Her uniform was tailored within an inch of its life. Her scarf was tied in a knot so tight it looked painful, and her hair was lacquered into a helmet of hairspray. She had a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a barrier, not a greeting. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Wentworth," Meredith cooed as the man in the suit approached. She practically curtsied. "It is so good to see you again. Seat 2A as always. Let me take your jacket." "Good to see you, Meredith. Keep the champagne coming. It's been a week." Wentworth grunted, stepping inside. Vivian stepped up next. Meredith's smile vanished. It didn't fade. It was deleted. She looked at Vivian, then looked past her, scanning the jet bridge for more passengers. When she realized no one else was immediately behind Vivian, she looked back annoyed. Boarding pass Meredith demanded handout. No welcome, no hello. Vivian held out her phone again. Meredith didn't scan it immediately. She looked at the screen, then at Vivian. "This is a first-class boarding pass." "Yes," Vivian said. "I know." "You must be mistaken," Meredith said, her voice dropping to a patronizing register, the kind used for unruly toddlers. "The upgrade list didn't clear anyone today. The cabin is full. You probably have a seat in premium economy, and the app is glitching. Economy is down the second aisle to the right. I purchased this seat." Vivian said, her voice hardening. "Full fare. Check your manifest." Meredith huffed an ugly sound for someone in customer service. She looked at the tablet in her hand. She scrolled down her manicured nail, tapping the glass aggressively. She stopped. Her eyes narrowed. "Vivian Lauron," she read. She looked up. Suspicion written in every line of her face. "You're the one." "That's me." Meredith stared at her for a long, uncomfortable second. She looked at the hoodie. She looked at the sneakers. She looked at Vivian's skin, her dark complexion, contrasting with the pale interior of the cabin. "Well," Meredith said, barely concealing her disgust, "I need to see identification and the credit card used to book the flight." "Is that standard procedure?" Vivian asked. "You didn't ask Mr. Wentworth for his credit card." "Mr. Wentworth is a known flyer," Meredith snapped. "We have to be careful with fraud. It's been rampant lately. People stealing miles using stolen cards. You understand?" There it is. Vivian thought the accusation. "I understand perfectly," Vivian said. She reached into her bag. She could have produced her black card. She could have produced her corporate ID. Instead, she produced her passport and held it open. Clear as throat. Meredith snatched it. She scrutinized the photo, then the face. She flipped through the pages, seeing stamps from Tokyo, Dubai, Singapore, Zurich. This seemed to annoy her even more. A woman who looked like this shouldn't be traveling this much. "Fine," Meredith said, shoving the passport back. "Seat 1A to the left. Try not to disturb the other passengers. They're here to rest." Vivian took her passport. "I'll do my best." She walked into the first-class cabin. It was stunning, a sanctuary of walnut wood and cream leather. There were only 8 suites. Seat 1A was the prime spot, a private cocoon with sliding doors as she stowed her small bag in the overhead bin. She felt eyes on her. Mr. Wentworth was watching her from 2A across the aisle. "Unbelievable," he muttered loud enough for her to hear. "Standards have really dropped." Vivian sat down, settling into the plush leather. She pressed the button to recline the seat slightly. Chloe, the younger flight attendant, appeared a moment later with a tray of pre-flight drinks. She looked terrified. "Champ ma'am or orange juice champagne would be lovely." "Thank you," Vivian said, smiling warmly to put the girl at ease. Chloe reached for a crystal flute. "Chloe." Meredith's voice whipped from the galley like a lash. "Come here now." Chloe froze, her hand trembling. She looked at Vivian apologetically and hurried back to the galley. Vivian leaned forward slightly, her hearing sharp. The galley curtain wasn't fully closed. "What do you think you're doing?" Meredith hissed. "Serving the pre-flight drinks, Meredith. Like the manual says. Don't waste the donor perinon on her." Meredith whispered, though the acoustics of the plane carried the sound perfectly, to 1A. "She probably used a stolen card to get that seat. Fraud team is probably going to pull her off before we even taxi. Just give her water or juice. Save the vintage for the real passengers. But she's in 1A. Do as I say, Chloe. I run this cabin. If you want to keep your job, you'll stop questioning me." Vivian sat back, a cold smile touching her lips. She pulled out her phone again. She opened the messaging app. To Board of Directors Emergency Group from V. Laron. Message. "We have a severe culture problem on Flight 9002. Initiating Phase 2. Don't let the pilot leave the gate until I give the signal." She put the phone down. Chloe returned a moment later. She held a plastic cup with orange juice. She looked like she wanted to cry. "Here you go, ma'am. We're out of champagne for the moment. Just chilling more bottles." It was a lie. Vivian could see the open bottle of Dom sitting on the counter in the galley, condensation purling on the glass. "Thank you, Chloe," Vivian said softly. "It's not your fault." She took the plastic cup. It was a calculated insult. In a cabin where tickets cost $12,000, serving someone in plastic, while others drank from crystal, was an act of war. Mr. Wentworth, sipping from his crystal flute, smirked at her. "Dry flight?" he asked. "Something like that," Vivian replied. She checked her watch. 10 minutes to push back. The doors were about to close. The trap was set. Now she just had to wait for Meredith to walk right into it. The aircraft pushed back from the gate, the hum of the engines vibrating through the floorboards. In the first-class cabin, the atmosphere was usually one of hushed anticipation and luxury. Today, however, the air in seat 1A was thick with tension. Vivian watched the safety demonstration video playing on her screen, her expression unreadable behind her sunglasses. She had removed them briefly to wipe the lenses, revealing eyes that were sharp, assessing, and devoid of fear. As the plane began its long taxi to the runway, Meredith began her rounds to take meal orders for the post-takeoff service. She moved with the grace of a predator, her tablet held against her chest. She stopped at seat 2A. Mr. Wentworth, she purred, leaning in, so her perfume something floral and overpowering wafted across the aisle. For dinner tonight, we have the pan-seared Chilean sea bass with a saffron reduction, or the filet mignon cooked to your preference. And of course, I've already set aside the 2015 Bordeaux you enjoy. I'll take the steak Meredith medium rare and keep the red wine flowing. Wentworth replied, shooting a dismissive glance toward Vivian. I'll need something to help me sleep considering the proximity of certain elements. Of course, sir. I'll make sure you're not disturbed. Meredith moved to seat 1F, then 2F, taking orders with professional courtesy. Then she walked past seat 1A. She didn't stop. She didn't pause. She simply walked toward the galley. Vivian pressed the call button. The soft ding ear echoed in the quiet cabin. Meredith froze. Her shoulders stiffened. She turned around slowly, her face a mask of annoyed patience. She walked back to one not entering the suite, but standing in the aisle looking down. Yes, Meredith asked. Is there an emergency? You didn't take my dinner order? Vivian said calmly. Meredith let out a short, incredulous breath. Oh, I assumed you wouldn't be eating. Why would you assume that on a 7-hour flight? Well, Meredith lowered her voice, leaning in with a conspiratorial nastiness. Usually when people upgrade at the last second or acquire tickets through non-standard means, the catering hasn't been adjusted. We only have enough gourmet meals for the manifest list confirmed 24 hours ago. I can't take a steak from Mr. Wentworth to give to you. Can I? I booked this ticket 3 days ago. Vivian lied smoothly. She had actually booked it that morning. But as the owner, her preference profile was hard-coded into the system to override inventory counts. My profile requests the vegan option. We don't have any vegan options left. Meredith lied, not even checking her tablet. I can bring you some crackers from the snack basket. Or maybe there's an extra economy meal chicken or pasta. But you'll have to wait until the main service is done. I prioritize my full fare guests. I am a full fare guest. Vivian repeated, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. And I know for a fact that Aura Airways stocks 2 spare first-class meals for crew consumption or emergencies on every transatlantic flight. Regulation 14B of the service manual. Meredith's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected the passenger to quote the manual, but her arrogance quickly overrode her caution. Regulation 14B, Meredith scoffed, applies to paying customers. And as for crew meals, those are for the crew who work. I'm not giving up my break meal for you. She straightened up, smoothing her skirt. Crackers or nothing. Your choice. And take off those sunglasses. It's dark in here, and it makes you look suspicious. I'll wait, Vivian said, for the outcome. The outcome, Meredith frowned. The outcome of this service, Vivian clarified. You may go. Meredith bristled at being dismissed. She glared at Vivian for a heartbeat longer, then spun on her heel and marched to the galley. Vivian could hear her voice loud and complaining, speaking to Chloe. Can you believe the entitlement regulation 14B? She probably used to clean planes or something. That's how she knows. Keep an eye on her, Chloe. I don't want her wandering around the cabin. Vivian pulled out her phone. The plane was taxiing, but the Wi-Fi was active. She opened the internal Aura Airways HR portal. She had administrator access. She navigated to the personnel file for Meredith Vane. Employment start date August 2012. Performance reviews, mixed. High marks for punctuality. Multiple complaints regarding attitude and condescension flagged by economy passengers but never acted upon. Vivian tapped the edit function. She didn't fire her yet. She simply added a note to the live file. Subject: actively violating code of conduct. Section 4, discrimination, and Section 7, theft of service monitoring in progress. She looked across the aisle. Mr. Wentworth was staring at her. You know, he said, his voice dripping with unsolicited advice. You catch more flies with honey. Meredith runs a tight ship. You shouldn't antagonize her. It's a privilege to be up here. You should act like you appreciate it. A privilege is something unearned, Mr. Wentworth, Vivian replied coolly. A service is something I paid for. There is a distinction. Perhaps you're too used to privileges to notice the difference. Wentworth turned a shade of beet red. He scoffed and turned his back to her, opening his newspaper. The plane turned onto the active runway. The engines roared to life. As the force of the takeoff pushed Vivian back into her seat, she closed her eyes. The physical ascent had begun, but the moral descent of the crew was about to hit terminal velocity. 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin activity began instantly. The smell of warming nuts and baking bread filled the air. Scents that were noticeably absent from Vivian's tray table, which remained locked and empty. Chloe, the junior flight attendant, hurried past with a hot towel basket. She looked at Vivian, then at the galley where Meredith was watching like a hawk. Chloe bit her lip, her eyes pleading for forgiveness, and walked past seat 1A without offering a towel. Vivian noted it, complicit through silence, she thought. Fear is a reason, not an excuse. Then the incident happened. Mr. Wentworth stood up to use the lavatory. He patted his jacket pockets, then his pants pockets. He frowned. He checked the side storage of his seat. He began shifting cushions, his movements becoming more frantic. "Meredith," he barked. Meredith was at his side in an instant. "Mr. Wentworth, what's wrong? My watch?" he said, his voice rising in panic. "My Paddock Fipe. I took it off right after takeoff to get comfortable. I put it right here on the center console. It's gone." The cabin fell silent. A PC Felipe could cost anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000. It wasn't just jewelry, it was an asset. Meredith's face went pale, then hard. "Are you sure, sir?" "Of course I'm sure. I put it right there." He pointed to the small cocktail table that separated his suite from the aisle. Meredith's head snapped toward Vivian. Vivian hadn't moved. She was reading a book on her tablet, but she felt the gaze. She looked up. "It was her," Wentworth said, pointing a shaking finger across the aisle. "She's the only one who has been near me. I saw her eyeing it earlier." "I haven't left my seat," Vivian said calmly. "And the aisle is 3 FT wide." Meredith marched over to seat 1A. The pretense of service was entirely gone now. She was now a warden. "Stand up," Meredith commanded. "Excuse me? Stand up?" Meredith's voice was loud enough that passengers in rows 3 and 4 were now craning their necks. "Mr. Wentworth is missing a valuable item. You," Clear's throat, "are the only person who could have taken it. I need to search your seat and your person. You have absolutely no authority to search my person." Vivian said, her voice like ice. "That is a matter for law enforcement. If you accuse me of theft, you better be prepared for the legal consequences of being wrong. I am the purser on this aircraft. I have authority over cabin safety. A thief is a safety threat." Meredith improvised, desperate to please her high-status passenger. "Now empty your pockets and that hoodie and give me your bag." "No," Vivian said. "If you don't cooperate," Meredith threatened, "I will have the captain restrain you. We have zip ties for unruly passengers. Do you want to arrive in London in cuffs, or do you want to give the watch back now, and maybe we won't press charges?" "I don't have the watch, Meredith." "Liar," Wentworth shouted. "She's got it. Look at her. She probably does this for a living. Airport scams. She forced her way into the priority line. She forced her way onto the plane. And now she's robbing us." Meredith reached out and grabbed Vivian's handbag from the overhead bin, which was open. "Don't touch that," Vivian warned. It wasn't a plea. It was an order. Meredith ignored her. She dumped the contents of the bag onto Vivian's lap. A laptop, a charger, a small makeup kit, and a wallet fell out. No watch. "It's in her pockets," Meredith hissed. "Chloe, get the captain. Tell him we have a level 2 security situation. Theft and non-compliance." Chloe stood frozen in the aisle, looking between the furious Meredith, the red-faced Wentworth, and the eerie calm of Vivian. "Go!" Meredith screamed. Chloe ran toward the cockpit. Vivian slowly picked up her wallet from her lap. She dusted it off. She looked Meredith dead in the eye. "You have just made the biggest mistake of your career," Vivian said softly. "You violated my personal property. You publicly defamed me. And you are profiling me based on race and attire." "I'm profiling you based on behavior," Meredith yelled. "You don't belong here." Suddenly, the intercom crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. The voice was deep and serious. We have a report of a disturbance in the forward cabin. I'm going to ask everyone to remain seated with their seat belts fastened. The plane didn't bank or descend, but the mood shifted. This was serious. Vivian picked up her phone. She didn't care about the airplane mode rule anymore. She activated the satellite data connection, a feature reserved for the cockpit but accessible via her encrypted device. She dialed a number. Yes. Connect me to Captain Miller on Flight 902 via the emergency dispatch channel. Authorization code Oscar Zulu 11. Override. And whatever he is doing. Meredith stared at her. Who are you talking to? Put the phone away. That is a federal offense. Vivian ignored her. She waited 3 seconds. Then the cabin intercom clicked off, but the phone in the galley, the interphone used by the pilots to talk to the crew, rang loudly. 5 sharp rings. The emergency pattern. Meredith looked confused. She looked at the phone, then at Vivian. Answer it, Meredith, Vivian said. Meredith hesitated, then walked to the wall unit and picked up the receiver. Cabin Meredith speaking. Vivian watched Meredith's face. It went from angry to confused to absolutely bloodless in the span of 10 seconds. Captain I. Yes, there is a passenger. She... what? Meredith looked at Vivian. Her hand started to shake. The receiver rattled against her ear. I don't understand. She's sitting right here. She's wearing a hoodie. She clears throat. Meredith listened for another moment. She swallowed hard. Yes, Captain. Yes. Immediately, Meredith hung up the phone. She looked like she was about to vomit. The plane began to bank sharply to the left. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice returned, sounding strained. This is the captain. We are turning the aircraft around. We are returning to JFK immediately due to a personnel issue. I repeat, we are returning to New York. A collective groan went up from the cabin. Why are we turning around? Wentworth demanded. Did you find the watch? Is she being arrested? Meredith didn't answer him. She was staring at Vivian, her mouth slightly open. Clears throat. Vivian stood up. She brushed the crumbs of the crackers which she never got off her leggings. She walked to the galley right into Meredith's personal space. The captain is turning around, Vivian whispered. Because I ordered him to you. Meredith squeaked. I'm the new owner of Aura Airways. Vivian said, her voice clear and carrying through the silent first-class cabin. And I don't tolerate racists on my payroll. She turned to the stunned cabin. Mr. Wentworth, Vivian said, pointing to the gap between his seat cushion and the wall. Your watch slid down the side. I saw it slip when you adjusted your blanket. Wentworth jammed his hand down the gap. He pulled out the PEC pipe. The silence that followed was deafening. Now, Vivian said, checking her own watch. We land in 20 minutes. Meredith. I suggest you use this time to pack your personal belongings, because when those doors open, you are not leaving as a crew member. You are leaving as a liability. The flight back to New York was shorter than the outbound leg, but inside the cabin, time seemed to stretch into an agonizing eternity. The atmosphere in first class had shifted from a clubby exclusive cocktail party to a funeral wake. The silence was absolute. No one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional nervous clinking of glass from the galley where Meredith and Chloe were hiding. Meredith sat on the jump seat, her face buried in her hands. The facade of the imperious, untouchable purser had crumbled, leaving behind a terrified woman who realized she had just insulted the person who signed her paychecks. She kept replaying the interaction in her head, desperately looking for a loophole, a way to spin the narrative. Maybe I can say I was following security protocol. Maybe I can say she was acting erratic. But then she remembered the call to the captain. Clears throat. The immediate turnaround, the sheer power required to divert a transatlantic flight was something she couldn't comprehend. In seat 2A, Mr. Wentworth was undergoing his own personal crisis. He stared at the Patek Philippe watch now back on his wrist. It felt heavy. It felt like a shackle. He looked across the aisle at Vivian. Vivian had returned to her work. She was typing furiously on her secure laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. She wasn't just checking emails. She was dismantling the hierarchy of the JFK base. She was pulling logs reviewing surveillance footage from the check-in counters, which was being streamed to ETA in real time, and drafting legal notices. Wentworth cleared his throat. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. Miss Laurent," he stammered. Vivian didn't look up. "Mr. Wentworth, unless you are choking, I suggest you remain silent. You've done enough talking for one flight. I just wanted to say," he pushed on his voice, trembling with a mix of shame and fear of litigation. "I made a mistake. The watch? It must have slipped. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. I hope you won't hold this against me. I'm a platinum partner with the airline." Vivian stopped typing. She slowly turned her head. She lowered her sunglasses, her dark eyes pinning him to the seat. "You didn't make a mistake, Mr. Wentworth. You made a choice." She said, her voice calm but devastating. "You chose to believe that a black woman in a hoodie could only be a thief. You chose to weaponize the crew against me. You chose to humiliate me because my presence disrupted your worldview of what wealth looks like." "I didn't mean it like that," he protested weakly. "You meant exactly that she cut him off. And as for your platinum status, I wouldn't worry about it." "Why?" "Because, as of 5 minutes ago, Vivian said, tapping a final key on her laptop, I've revoked it. You are banned from Aura Airways for life. Effective upon touchdown." Wentworth's jaw dropped. You can't do that. I spend $200,000 a year with this airline, and I spent $4 billion buying it," Vivian replied, turning back to her screen. "I think my vote counts more. Enjoy your final moments in first class. The return trip will be on a different carrier. I hear the bus to Newark is quite affordable." Wentworth slumped back in his seat, defeated. The other passengers in first class who had watched the exchange with wide eyes immediately pretended to be asleep or engrossed in their books. No one wanted to be next on the chopping block. The intercom crackled. "Cabin crew, prepare for landing," Captain Miller's voice said. He sounded exhausted. As the plane descended through the clouds, the Manhattan skyline appeared in the distance, grey and imposing. Usually a return to the gate was routine. But as the plane touched down on the tarmac, the passengers noticed something unusual. They weren't taxiing to a normal gate. They were being directed to a remote stand far away from the terminal. And looking out the window, they could see why. A convoy of black SUVs was waiting on the tarmac. Next to them were 2 Port Authority police cruisers with lights flashing silently, and standing in front of the vehicles was a group of people in sharp business suits looking very serious. Meredith peeked out the porthole in the galley door. Her blood ran cold. She recognized the woman standing at the front of the group on the ground. It was Director Graves, the global head of human resources for Aura Airways, a woman known as the Grim Reaper among the staff, because she only showed up for mass layoffs or executive terminations. "Oh, God," Meredith whispered. "Graves is here." Chloe was crying silently. "What are we going to do, Meredith? Shut up." Meredith snapped through. There was no heat in it. "Just fix your scarf. Stand up straight. Deny everything. It's her word against ours. We have union rep rights." The plane came to a halt. The engines winded down. The fastened seatbelt sign turned off. Usually there is a rush to get bags. Today, nobody moved. The passengers sensed that they were in the middle of a scene from a movie, and they wanted to see the ending. The forward door opened. Captain Miller stepped out of the cockpit. He looked at Meredith, then at Vivian in 1A. He didn't say a word to his crew. He walked straight to Vivian's seat. "Ms. Lauren," the captain said, removing his cap. "We have arrived. The stairs are attached. Director Graves is waiting for you." Vivian unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up, stretching her legs. She picked up her bag, the one Meredith had dumped out. "Thank you, Captain." She said, "You flew well. I listened to the cockpit voice recorder data on the way back. You tried to question Meredith's assessment of the threat 3 times before she lied to you about my behavior. You are cleared." The captain let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. "Thank you, Mum." Vivian turned to the galley. "Meredith, Chloe, grab your bags. You're coming with me." We have post-flight checks to do. Meredith tried to argue, clinging to procedure like a life raft. No, Vivian said, you don't because you don't work on this aircraft anymore. Move. She walked to the open door, the cool New York air hitting her face. She stepped out onto the metal stairs. Flashbulbs went off passengers inside the terminal and ground crew were filming. The Queen had returned to her court and heads were about to roll. The wind on the tarmac was brisk, whipping Vivian's hoodie around her frame as she descended the stairs. Despite her casual attire, she projected more authority than anyone in a suit. Director Graves, a tall woman with steel grey hair and glasses that looked like they could cut glass, stepped forward. She was flanked by two large men from corporate security. Ms. Lauren Graves said, extending a hand, I received your data packet. We've already processed the files. Good, Vivian said, shaking the hand firmly. Let's get this over with. I have a board meeting at 4. Behind Vivian, Meredith and Chloe stumbled down the stairs. They looked small and exposed on the vast tarmac. Director Graves? Meredith said, her voice shaking. I can explain. There was a security concern regarding a passenger who save it, Meredith. Graves said, her voice flat. She held up a tablet. Ms. Lauren sent us the audio recording from the cabin. We heard everything. The refusal of service, the profiling, the false accusation of theft, the lies to the captain. Meredith's face crumpled. But she was wearing a hoodie. She looked like a customer. Graves interrupted. A customer who pays your salary, or rather used to. Graves nodded to the security officers. One of them stepped forward holding a plastic bin. Meredith Vane. Graves announced formally, her voice carrying over the wind. Effective immediately. Your employment with Aura Airways is terminated for gross misconduct violation of the anti-discrimination policy and endangerment of flight operations. Hand over your badge, your company ID, and your perimeter access keycard. You can't do this here. Meredith shrieked, looking around at the ground crew who had stopped loading luggage to watch. I have rights. I want my union rep. Your union contract has a clause for malicious conduct, Vivian interjected, stepping closer. I wrote the clause, Meredith, 10 years ago when I was a junior legal consultant for the union. I know exactly what it says. You forfeited your representation the moment you lied to the captain to incite a false arrest. Meredith looked at Vivian, really looking at her for the first time. She saw the intelligence, the power, and the absolute lack of sympathy in Vivian's eyes. With trembling hands, Meredith unpinned her wings, the silver wings she had worn for 12 years. She dropped them into the plastic bin, then her ID, then her keycard. You are now a trespasser in a secure area, the security officer said. We will escort you to the public side of the terminal. You will be mailed your personal effects from your locker. And Chloe Vivian asked, turning to the younger flight attendant. Chloe was sobbing openly now. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm so sorry. I was just scared of her. Clear's throat. She said she'd have me fired if I didn't listen. Vivian studied the girl. She saw fear, not malice. But fear was dangerous in the sky, Director Graves Vivian said. Chloe is suspended for 3 months unpaid. Chloe looked up, shocked she wasn't fired. During that time, Vivian continued, you will attend the mandatory sensitivity retraining program and you will retake the assertiveness course for cabin crew. You need to learn that your duty is to the passenger and the safety of the plane, not to a bully senior person. If you pass, you can come back on probation. If you fail, you're out. Thank you, Chloe whispered. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Vivian said. It's going to be the hardest 3 months of your life. Just then, a commotion came from the terminal doors near the gate. A man was being led down the stairs by another security team. It was Kyle, the gate agent. He looked confused and angry, still holding his clipboard. When he saw the scene on the tarmac, the black SUVs, the crying flight attendants, and the woman in the hoodie standing next to the director of HR, he stopped dead. What is going on? Kyle demanded. I was in the middle of boarding the London flight. Why am I being dragged down here? Vivian turned to him. She took off her sunglasses completely. Hello, Kyle, she said. Remember me? I'm the glitch in the system. Clear's throat. Kyle's eyes widened. He looked at Meredith, who was being led away in tears. He looked at Vivian. The realization hit him like a physical blow. You're the 1A, he stammered. And the owner, Vivian corrected. Director Graves. Graves stepped toward Kyle. Kyle Miller, we reviewed the CCTV footage of the check-in interaction. You refused a valid first-class passenger entry to the priority lane, mocked her appearance, and delayed her boarding without cause. You're fired. But she was wearing a hoodie, Kyle yelled, echoing Meredith's defense. How was I supposed to know she was the CEO? Vivian stepped into his personal space. That is the point, Kyle. You treat the CEO with respect because of who I am. You treat a janitor with respect because of who you are. You failed the character test. I don't want people like you representing my brand. Hand over the vest, the security guard ordered. Kyle stripped off his blue Aura Airways vest. He threw it on the ground in a fit of pique. This is ridiculous, Kyle shouted. You're ruining my life over a misunderstanding. You ruined your own life, Vivian said. I just signed the paperwork. As security escorted Kyle and Meredith away toward the terminal exit, a long, humiliating walk. While passengers watched from the terminal windows, Vivian turned back to the aircraft. Mr. Wentworth was standing at the top of the stairs, holding his bag, looking terrified to come down. Mr. Wentworth, Vivian called out. The bus is waiting. A generic airport shuttle bus had pulled up, contrasting sharply with the luxury SUVs. Director Graves, Vivian said, Newer Mr. Wentworth is escorted to the curb and make sure his name is flagged in the Alliance system. I don't want him flying with our partners either. Consider it done, Miss Lauren. Vivian took a deep breath of the jet fuel-scented air. It smelled like victory, but she wasn't done. She pulled out her phone. A video of the confrontation on the plane, filmed by a passenger in 3 of, had already hit Twitter decks. It had 50,000 views in 10 minutes. The hashtag Aura Airways CEO was trending. She opened her camera app and switched to video mode. She framed herself with the plane in the background. Time to control the narrative, she muttered. She pressed record. Hi everyone, this is Vivian Lauren. I'm the new owner of Aura Airways. You might have seen a video circulating of an incident on Flight 92 today. I want to be clear. Under my leadership, Aura Airways will be a place of dignity for everyone. The crew involved have been terminated. The passenger who made false accusations has been banned. We are cleaning house. If you experience discrimination on my planes, tell me. I'm listening. And to my staff, treat every passenger like they own the place, because you never know. They might. She stopped recording and hit send. All right, Vivian said to Graves. Get the car. I need a shower, a real meal and a new flight crew. I still have to get to London. We have a reserve crew ready in an hour. M. Lauren, Graves said, opening the door of the lead SUV. Vivian slid into the leather seat. As the convoy pulled away, leaving the stunned airport staff and the disgraced former employees in its wake, she finally allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Karma hadn't just hit. It had arrived first class. The fallout wasn't just a ripple, it was a tsunami. By the time Vivian's SUV pulled up to her penthouse in Manhattan, the hashtag #Aura Airways had eclipsed the Super Bowl in trending topics. The video of Meredith's sneering face and Mr. Wentworth's red-faced accusations had been viewed 40 million times, but the real drama was happening behind the scenes. The next morning, Aura Airways stock dipped 4% at the opening bell. Investors were nervous about the instability. By noon, it had rallied to finish 12% up. Why? Because the public loved justice. Vivian's selfie video from the tarmac had become a manifesto for a new era of corporate accountability. Vivian didn't stop at the airport. 2 days later, she convened an emergency all-hands meeting at Aura's headquarters. She projected the check-in security footage of Kyle onto a screen the size of a cinema. This, Vivian told the assembled executives, is costing us money. Not because we lost a customer, but because we lost our dignity. We are rebranding. No more exclusionary luxury. Our new motto is excellence for everyone. She fired 3 regional managers that day who had ignored previous complaints about Meredith. The message was clear. The rot starts at the head, and Vivian was cutting it out. For Meredith Vane, the karma was swift, brutal, and public. A week after the incident, she sat in an interview for a budget airline that flew exclusively to holiday party destinations. It was a humiliating step down from the first-class transatlantic routes of Aura, but she needed the money. The interviewer, a young man with a nose ring, looked at her resume, then at her face. He paused. He pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. He turned the screen around. It was a meme, a screen capture of Meredith's face from the viral video distorted and captioned the face of Karen Eyre. "Is this you?" the interviewer asked. Meredith's throat went dry. That was a misunderstanding. I was following protocol." "Yeah, we don't hire memes," he said, standing up, "especially not ones that hate customers. You're blacklisted Miss Vane. The flight attendant union won't touch you. I doubt you'll get a job handing out peanuts at a circus, let alone on a plane." Clear's throat. Meredith walked out into the rain, her career in aviation incinerated. 6 months later, she was spotted working the drive-thru at a fast food joint near Queens. One afternoon, a customer in a hoodie complained that his fries were cold. Meredith started to argue, then stopped. She looked at the hoodie. She shut her mouth, handed him fresh fries, and apologized. She had learned her lesson, but the tuition had cost her everything. Mr. Wentworth fared no better. He was a partner at a boutique investment firm. The morning after the flight, he arrived at his office to find his keycard deactivated. Security met him in the lobby. Not the friendly guards he used to joke with, but a new team. They handed him a box. "Your partners voted this morning." The guard said, "They're buying you out. Clause 7 in your partnership agreement. Reputational damage to the firm. No one wants to invest money with the guy who tried to have a black CEO arrested for stealing a watch he lost. I can sue." Wentworth screamed, his face turning that familiar shade of beet red. "You can try," a voice said behind him. It was Vivian. She was walking through the lobby of the same building. She was there to acquire the building, not visit him. She stopped and lowered her sunglasses. "But I have excellent lawyers, Mr. Wentworth," she said. "And I have the video, and I have the support of the public. If you sue, I will countersue for defamation, and I will take whatever is left of your portfolio and donate it to a scholarship fund for underprivileged pilots. Go home." Wentworth took his box and left. He moved to Florida a month later, unable to show his face in New York social circles. 3 months later, Vivian was on another Aura Airways flight. This time she was flying to Tokyo. She was in seat 1A. She wore a blazer this time, but still kept her sneakers. A flight attendant approached her. It was Chloe. Chloe looked different. She stood taller. Her uniform was crisp, but her smile was genuine, not plastered on. She held a tray with a crystal glass of sparkling water and a small porcelain bowl of warm nuts. "Welcome aboard, Miss Lauren," Chloe said, her voice steady. "We have the Japanese menu prepared for you, or the Western option if you prefer." Vivian looked at the young woman. She checked the name tag. There was a small gold star next to her name, the symbol for a crew member who had received a perfect customer satisfaction score in the last quarter. "The Japanese menu sounds perfect, Chloe." Vivian said, "How is the job?" "It's hard work," Chloe admitted. "But it feels better. We stopped profiling. We just serve. It's amazing how much nicer the passengers are when you treat them like human beings first." "Good," Vivian said. She raised her glass. "Carry on." As the plane lifted off, climbing above the clouds into the golden light of the stratosphere. Vivian looked out the window. She thought about Kyle, about Meredith, about Wentworth. They had built their lives on the idea that they were gatekeepers, that they got to decide who belonged and who didn't. They forgot the most important rule of gravity. Everything that goes up must come down. But for those who stay grounded, even when they're at 30,000 FT, the sky is the limit. Vivian closed her eyes and finally truly relaxed. The turbulence was over. And that is how Vivian Law turned a flight from hell into a masterclass in justice. It serves as a brutal reminder you never know who you are talking to. The person in the hoodie might own the building. The quiet woman in the corner might be your boss. Arrogance is a heavy bag to carry, and eventually they will make you check it at the gate. Meredith and Kyle learned the hard way. That character is the only currency that matters. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice and instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder to be kind and hit. Subscribe with the notification bell on so you never miss a story. We have a crazy drama coming up next week about a landlord who tried to evict a tenant only to realize the tenant owned the mortgage. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.